muted. There we go.
Okay.
Recording in
Call to order
progress.
the Mount Anthony Union High School School District 14 Board of Directors meeting. Today is the 17th of December. It's 5:33. The first thing on the agenda is public comments. We can move on to the second item, which is the consent agenda. We have minutes, warrants, retirements, resignations, and nominations. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
So I have a motion by Scott, second by Glenn. Any discussions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. We move on to finance. We have a FY 27 budget review. That I believe is posted online and, Renee, do you want to walk through it?
I do have hard copies. I don't know if it's circulated around. What I have, or what I'm gonna share up on the screen is a little bit different than what is in that handout that's coming around in hard copy. Just trying to make things a little bit more concise and hopefully a little bit more understandable in the format that I've got projecting here and sharing my screen. So to get started, so the budget, as I have it presented here, is probably what most of you are used to seeing the past several years. We're looking at actuals for the past 3 fiscal years, current budget that we're in of FY 26, and then the proposed budget of FY 27. The second page of the packet is just kind of the biggest budget drivers, so just budget highlights. The third page is FTEs. We look at revenue, and then the final page of your handout is the crazy mathematical equation of how we get from expenditure budget to projected tax rates. So to just talk about some of the biggest budget drivers that you have, or what is in this budget that you have before you today. So all of the current FTEs that we have are in this current budget, with the addition of a 0.2 FTE for a prevention coordinator. This is due to some limited funding, federal, well, it's actually state. Federal funds coming through the state for that work and potential. We have a 2-year grant also supporting some of that prevention work. That is a competitive grant that I don't know if the state is going to actually re-up and offer that again for FY 27. So we've added a 0.2 FTE to maintain at least the 4 days that we have with our current coordinator, in hopes that the remaining money that has been consistently supporting this work and that position will continue coming from the state. We do have a request of a 1.0 FTE add for an academic support position. And this is also coming through a request because of expiring grant funds. We have a couple of positions actually right now supported through the Title I School Improvement Grant, and that grant is expiring on June 30th. So that position would be at the middle school. And then one other shift in FTEs, but not a budgetary impact, is transitioning a vacant social studies teacher to an HHB coordinator at the high school campus. So this would be a position to mirror the one that already exists at the middle school and has been there for a couple of years. And I think the hope was to actually transition that position this year to get somebody in that role as soon as we could. Okay, so those are the changes with the salaries, and of course, many of you are probably aware that our collective bargaining agreements are also under negotiations right now. So I do have factors built in for potential salary adjustments. Pending the outcome of those negotiations. Benefits, as is typical, we are looking at an increase of our health insurance premiums. Thankfully, this year, it's the first year in the past several where it's only a single-digit increase in insurance premiums. This budget has 8% built in. In a recent meeting, I was in with an update from the Vermont Education Health Initiative. They have presented rates to the Department of Department of Financial Regulation, the state level. They have been kind of going back and forth as they typically do. They want to make sure that they have enough money in their reserves. But they are feeling pretty confident that rates that they've proposed are going to be accepted. Usually doesn't happen until mid-January, so hopefully we'll get a communication out from them in the coming week saying that, yeah, we can go with the rates, then I might be able to pull that 8% back a little bit. I think the rate that they proposed rate for the gold CDHP is 7.4% increase, so there's just a little bit extra that we have in this budget here. The dental rates are also projected to go up 8% next year. Those have been flat for the past several years. So we do have that 8% factored into this draft of the budget. And another driver is the Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System. The employer contribution for any of those folks that are participating, so basically non-educational staff or licensed teacher staff. If you're not in teacher retirement, you're going to be in municipal retirement. That contribution is going up by 0.25%, again, as it has been for the past several years. Other substantial drivers are just things to note on the operations line. Driving that increase there is insurance premiums for our liability and property coverages. The lease for the bleachers in the gymnasium at the high school, and then some minor adjustments for services such as rubbish removal and pest control. I do want to note that on line 06 tuition, that is simply placeholder right now. What is in that line is Southwest Tech tuition, and we do have out of district placements as well. But announced tuition just opened today through the Agency of Education. So Southwest Tech will be setting their tuition rate once she shares that with me. Other data came in from the state on what the FTEs are for tech students. So we'll be able to calculate what the impact is to our budget here. So again, just a placeholder with the assumption the FTEs of our students attending Southwest Tech maintain the same, and it was a 5% what I projected for that placeholder. And the other thing to note is on the assessments, that budget and assessments were approved last night by the SVSU board. So that being said, so the FTEs, I think that's page 3 of your handout. Again, all of the current FTEs that we have in today's budget are also included in the budget for next year. I have noted in here with blue shading the requested FTE increases. And then one HHB coordinator, I don't have that highlighted because it is not, it's budget neutral. Basically taking one FTE from the social studies department and then sliding that into an admin support position. Stephanie, do you want me to hold there or just keep cruising through and then I'm gonna get into revenue and then start talking like calculation of tax rate, so.
Does anyone have any questions so far with what, I know that we're gonna get into even more complicated things when you talk about tax rates. Is there any questions for Renee at this point? I think I have a question. I know with Act 73, there's going to be a focus on classroom size, if I'm correct. And I think one of the things that I would be interesting to see is like comparing, I know we have had a declining enrollment. It'd be interesting to see what our FTE count was. I don't know, some snapshot a bit ago, and to see like whether we reduce the size of our staff, like of the staff as the enrollment just over time, or if we've kept it level and just. Yeah, I know it's not a one for one, but I'm just curious, like what that looks like.
I think Nick did, I don't know if he did it for MAU, he did a kind of a comparison, and he did it a couple of years ago, so it's not up to, I think he did it for this district. If not, it was for the elementary district, just a comparison of FTEs, and I think
Over the years. I mean, at some point that might be interesting to just look at as we start to process what.
Yeah.
So we continues what that would be.
So Renee and I talked about this very briefly this afternoon, so we were kind of anticipating that this would be helpful in a couple conversations. So I think my request was to go back 15 years, chart it every 5 years, current year, and you have a 5-year projection that's available to you with the building use study that the elementary school board commissioned. And so that might be a good 20-year snapshot, and would have enrollment and FTE count over that time. We won't have that tomorrow, but we can.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I think we could use it not only in the budget conversation, but other conversations, Act 73, building use, things like that.
And I think it would be helpful as we have the conversations with people who ask us, the obvious question is statewide as well. Enrollment continues to decline, costs keep going up. Help me understand.
Yep. We can talk a little bit about that too, and Renee pulls out the tax.
There's a number of reasons for it, but having that information would help all of us.
Sure.
Is when whoever gets to do that look back, are there positions that are like required by the state in our in this
ed quality standards.
I'm just, I guess, because that would be for my personal, there's I hear the our state talking a lot about putting pressure on us as local school boards to reduce the cost, but they could, in my opinion, they still hold a fair amount of control on some of them, having health insurance, not being a bargaining event that occurs at this level, that it's a statewide. That's probably 20% of our, what our benefits have to be some significant portion of our budget. But so it'd be interesting to me to see what things we don't have control of, but are in numbers.
They do continue to have state mandates, which are unfunded. Yeah.
So that's a challenge, right? So
Yeah.
Or any other question?
I had an opportunity to sit in a couple of meetings with elected officials this week, and we did give some pointy examples, like the recent AED requirement, which is a very noble goal. But for the SVSU, is we roughed it out we already have machines, the defibrillators in buildings, but to meet the requirements, about a $75,000 expense. So that's an example of a well-intentioned, but it has a real dollar amount, and it's not a one-time purchase. It has maintenance and ongoing replacement going forward too. So a couple of ahas in the crowd, but we were able to provide them with some examples.
And then as far as the class size minimums go, they have they've just formed a working committee at the state level to basically work through defining the parameters, because they do have some outs, for AP classes, and kindergarten classes aren't defined in Act 73. So they're going to work through those definitions, then also come up with the words they used were a transparent way to monitor accountability and have a process for that. So they say that they're gonna be checking and collecting data. We don't know what that looks like, and we don't know what's gonna be limited to the standards. It's a, 3-year average. But we do know that they're, in terms of class, which I think they're gonna have to define too, but if you have 2 grades, that's the limit that they will allow for a grade span combo class is 2 grades. You can't have, like, it would affect you, but a K1, 2, you can't have. You could do a K1 or 1, 2, but you can't have more than 2 grades in a span, which is curious though, because at the high school level, is that going to be an issue if you have 3 or 4? You've got freshmen, sophomore, juniors in a class. Wouldn't think it's going to be an issue, but it's something that they still have to define in terms of how the law is written. Okay, so with that, looking at revenue, we do have, we've projected 1 more student that is moving from elementary to secondary, coming in from out of district. So that is the increase that we have there for the incoming tuition. Fund balance is coming down as we were hoping it would over the past couple of years. So that's a good thing, but it does hurt at the same time. But then the general state support grant, I have highlighted there, as I always do, and have it bold, because this is the number that really drives what we're asking for from the ed fund and therefore the resulting tax rate. So you can see, even though the budget is up less than 6%, our education spending is up over 11%. So that's really how we're going to end up getting to the numbers that we're going to see in just a minute. So, and just to share some trends. So what I have up on the screen are just some graphs. And I think this was one of the handouts or one of the pieces in the packet as well. It was all on one page of ADM over time. So ADM is our average daily membership. What that means is the count of enrolled students from days 11 to 30. Just that 20-day window, there's a lot riding on that. So you can see what has been happening with those trends over time. This version that I have here for FY26 is from the AOE's version 6. As of Monday, they were out with version 8. I'm expecting a version 9. So our data folks keep reviewing. Every time there's a new version that comes out, they're vetting to make sure that our data is accurate.
So Renee, 2 pieces for folks to consider. So a declining student enrollment is a common theme across the state.
Right.
And when the December 1st letter came out, there was a consistent conversation across the state among districts, because this number is then weighted, jumping ahead of Renee a little bit, but there has been changes at the federal level, the state level, which is not in our control. And initial numbers were showing that we had fewer students were identified as living in poverty, miraculously. And so that was a concern. I heard that consistently in meetings this week too from superintendents, which sent your finance department back in and your tech department's going in head counting kids. So we're on version 9. It could very well be 10, 11, and 12 by the time we get down to the final number.
I mean, by statute, I believe that the AOE was supposed to have this count frozen by December 15th, and they've never, I mean, it's been May sometimes when they do it. But they've been better the last couple of years, and actually, I think last year was the first year they required superintendents to sign off, so they can then freeze the numbers. So the AOE is going to be pushing to make sure that the numbers are good in their final. So we will probably have this number frozen when we meet again in January. So those are 3 of our districts in the SU. The other 2, Arlington and Sandgate, you can see somewhat similar trends for them. And then just kind of a recap of where we are with this budget. And as I have up here, Mount Anthony in a slightly different shade of blue. I also have UED and North Bennington, because when we get to tax rates, we have to look at everybody combined. So since this board is just a high school district, so grades 6, 7 through 12, we need to combine that with the elementary components as well. So you can see Mount Anthony's draft 1, what we just looked at, 5.9% increase. The draft most recently gone to the SVU ESD was a 3% increase. And North Bennington, which they're going to be looking at in just a couple of minutes when I bounce next door, is down 0.6%. So again, just to recap, education spending, what we just looked at with our revenue, up 11.4% for Mount Anthony. Similar jump for the UED, see a 9.9% increase there. And then North Bennington, for them, they actually are looking at a significant fund balance, bringing in, helping them keep their numbers down. So our average daily membership has weights added to it, as Superintendent Payne alluded to. I think these are from version 6, looking at these each as a district preliminary version 6 compared to where they were current year. They're down across the board. So this is the average ADM. So they take that 2 years, and then they add all of the weights for grade spans, for poverty, for English learning, sparsity. None of our districts actually qualify for any of the small schools criteria. So with costs going up, education spending going up, but our long-term weighted ADM going down, these are things that are happening in opposition to one another for a good-looking tax rate. Before I get there, I just wanted to share this too. So this is our education spending per weighted pupil. This is what actually ends up on our ballot articles. So we have to compare our education spending per long-term weighted ADM this year to what it's projected to be next year. So once we finally get to a final budget and we have our long-term weighted ADM, we'll come up with a number. I have to compare them and then put that percentage increase or decrease on the ballot article, which right now is a 15.9% increase, which has nothing to do with any of the other numbers that we just looked at, right? So the budget's up under 6, ed spending is up 11.4, but this is the number required by statute to end up on the ballot article that our voters vote. Talk about confusing, right?
Right, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like our ed spending per pupil is considerably lower than other districts in the state. And so the percentage to me is only as meaningful as it is for just like looking at our activity, not comparing us to like ed spending in, in South Burlington or Rutland even, I don't know what Rutland's per pupil is, but
Actually, any of you that sat on the December 1st letter webinar that the VSBA did, some of the scenarios that Elizabeth Jennings ran through, she was talking like she had it factored into what she had there for excess spending, because there are so many districts that are spending more than the threshold, which has been reintroduced into legislation, which for this coming year is going to be $16,470. So you can see $16,470. None of our districts are even close to that on that first line. So, but there are a lot in the state that will get penalized for spending more than that.
Much, I like I like numbers and I like benchmarks just so I can let my mind draw comparisons. The change that happened with the weighting, if it were to have stayed the same year over year, what would we be looking at, especially on that classification of who's what students would be put into that poverty bracket, what students wouldn't.
Are you talking about the change from equalized pupils?
With the ADM, the long-term, the weighting within the.
The reduction in families who would have qualified under poverty, for example, that being lowered impacts us because it reduces your your weighted aid.
But it's also too that there are fewer students. I mean, across the whole
Yes,
list.
sure.
We have over like 109, I think we're down across all districts. So if you're down those and then it's basically compounded by any of the weights that those students would have qualified for. In addition to the federal, basically the grid for what you qualify as shifts.
How impactful is that shift financially?
Tough to say. I haven't analyzed it and I would know. It would be a pretty significant undertaking to go an analysis.
The other thing though is over time, the projection is over, let's say the immediate 5, they do a 10-year too, like I wouldn't bet my dollar on that, but a 5 is that weighted ADM will continue to go down. Because you'll have fewer and fewer kids over time, which brings less money back into ed spending. Meanwhile, your spending continues to climb for a whole host of things. So as Renee has said, it's two trends going in the wrong directions from each other.
So that's why you end up with ed spending per weighted pupil, significant increases like this. So what does that look like with the budget that you have before you and the other districts' budgets as they currently stand? This is what the preliminary tax rates would be for the member towns of the Mount Anthony Union High School District. When compared to the current rates, those are the cent increases, mainly across the board, with North Bennington being a decrease at this point. Those are your percentage changes. So when the December 1st letter came out, they were projecting a 12% increase in taxes. You can see just about all of our towns are well above that with this budget.
My understanding is that the governor, I don't know if he said it in an official statement, but at least in a conversation, has revisited buying down the tax rate, which the legislature did last year. But that only creates a deficit for you to plan around next year. We did sit in a group this week where an elected official seemed surprised by that scenario. I can't believe that they may have misunderstood the question. But buying down the tax rate again would be helpful in the immediate, but then it just creates an even deeper hole to climb out of the following year. So
So all of these numbers are on that really the colorful spreadsheet that you're used to seeing with all the numbers. I just wanted to try to make it a little bit more concise instead of the long drawn out math problem.
So Renee, any probability that the federal guidelines will shift again to be more reflective of what poverty looks like?
I would not want to speculate on what the feds might do.
Does that have an impact on that food service grant?
Okay.
Never mind.
There could be the potential, because right now, all of our schools are in what's referred to as the CEP, so the Community Eligibility Provision, which allows all of our students to eat for free because of the poverty that we have. But the feds certainly do have the ability to change that program, to change the qualifications for that program, or to just eliminate the program altogether, which,
the change was not communicated. I think we found out from colleagues.
Oh,
So Renee sitting with business managers, hey, this is what I heard, or I felt, it was not, we didn't receive an official statement from the federal government that said, by the way, we've decided as you're midway through the budget season to change the way you measure poverty. So
and another thing I think that's contributing to it is, so families that are qualifying for Medicaid. So some of that comes through to us and what's considered a direct certification list. So those kids automatically qualify for quote unquote the poverty, right? So if you don't qualify for Medicaid anymore, which we know that is being tinkered with at the federal level, that's also contributing. So. So just to give you some context, for the MAU budget of the equivalent of a penny on that tax rate is about $460,000, give or take, because it's different for every town. If you were to cut this budget in half, so reducing it by just over $1 million, $1,050,000, you're still gonna have tax increases between 10 cents and 26 cents, with the exception of North Bennington. If you wiped out the whole budget increase, so taking out the just over $2 million with the current numbers that we have here, it would still be an 8.5 cent to 23.5 cent increase, ranging in the towns. And then if you were to flatten ed spending, so that's cutting $3.6 million, you're still looking at between 5 and 20 cents increases for various towns. So it's not all on Mount Anthony. No, it's a joint effort with the SVU, ESD, and North Bennington as well. So it's, not the weight of the world on just this board. We do have some asks from the elementary board to come back with some options of limiting their budgets to a 0% increase, which of course is going to factor into the tax rates, but just wanted to share that context. We would, it's a lot to digest, but if there's any guidance or recommendations of what you'd like to see in the next draft.
We had two suggestions for folks to consider too, but I'm happy to take questions too. But one, there have been additional asks of the budget this year, additional positions, programs, or materials. So we could go back and look at those. And two, we asked Nick Galton, HR, on an average year, what is the turnover? What percentage of the professionals go on, will either retire, resign, go do another position? And it's about 10%. So if that holds true, you can think that 25 to 30 teaching positions will come open. And so you could look at saying, hey, anything that comes open in this current year, we want to take a look at and not automatically rehire. Those might be two steps to consider first.
And doesn't Act 73 have an impact in that as well, as Stephanie was sharing earlier? So wouldn't we need that information as well?
In what way?
If there's a minimum class size of
Sure.
whatever, pick a number, 15, 20. Do we have 15 or 20 taking this course, whatever this course is?
Yeah.
And if we don't, what is the difference between the number we need to fill?
It's a little bit different at every grade level. Well, probably a little more straightforward to determine at an elementary level. High school, it can be done as well. It's just a different approach, but absolutely we could determine. And I think to the first request of, hey, can you show us over time the enrollment and the FTE number matching it? And maybe there are areas where we can say, you're down 100 kids, do you still need this? So.
Or is there a demand, our student
Sure.
as well? And then the townwide assessments that are happening, what impact does that have?
So that'll be on the common level of appraisal. But so those equalization study reports should be coming out later this month, but they're looking back a year, so it's going to be a catch up. I did have, I think somebody from Shaftesbury ask about, well, I think we're almost done with ours, so how's that going to impact us? And I said, so when those letters come out, if there's a jump, it factors in to the tax rate calculation. So your CLA goes up, your tax rate's gonna come down because it's based on your grand list. But there is also an appeal process. So if a municipality feels like it's too low or too high, or whatever the case may be, there is a process to go through.
Have people complained it's too low?
Oh,
Their taxes are too low?
the taxes are too low, no, but there's CLAs. It's essentially just a representation of grand lists have not grown as much as the market has. So it's basically a comparison to market value to what the grand lists of the municipalities are.
To the average voter though, net of either is their taxes are going up.
Well,
No.
not necessarily, right? Like, I mean, it's not necessarily a one for, like, it doesn't flip equally between, it's, you feel free to, if I'm wrong, but like, I mean.
With this budget, yes, they would be.
But like with Shasberry, like if they're a value, right now, they're appraising or going through the reappraisal process, right? And they're essentially, some buildings will end up with more value, which could create more tax, right? In that, but it's not equal across the board, right? And because it's increasing, like you probably increasing base. And so then once they determine that the common level appraisal is like at 100, then we won't have this adjustment from a tax perspective on the school side. Like right now, it's showing that Shasberry is 92.86%. So they're like increasing our school tax because they're underfunding because of
The
the,
grand list is.
But you're
too
still
low.
gonna pay more on your property tax.
not necessarily, it depends on the person, right? So like if you.
Oh, because
If-
property taxes
Like,
are,
you could have bought yesterday, right? And that probably is closer to like the fair market value, right? Than someone who bought 10 years ago and has not had their house reappraised. And it has not been adjusted for market, right? So like if I bought pre-COVID and my house, what that I paid for was X, and you bought yesterday, like what you paid is probably closer because that's.
I didn't realize they adjust them on the fly. They adjust them
I think when someone builds a house and then they get
but
I'm
at every property transfer, at every property. I didn't realize
I don't
that.
know, it's a good question, but I thought, do you know for Bennington whether that's the case? Do they adjust it at the property transfer time or do they just adjust it with the rolling?
What goes onto the grand list?
Yeah.
I think is what the purchase price is.
Yeah, so I mean,
So if your purchase price is higher, like, yeah, you're paying it.
Okay.
And I think Beth was mentioning, and as I was gonna mention as well, so the Act 73, as it's written currently. Class size minimums for grades 6 to 8 or 15 students. And 18 for grades 9 through 12. But again, there are the caveats for. They identify things like CTE courses and
AP.
driver's ed and AP. So again, the state has to go through the process of defining what they're going to allow to be exemptions and then out and be implemented.
ask one other question. So I mean, going back to the revenue side, it looks like we've eaten into our fund balance, right? So we use 1.5, roughly 1.5 last year. Or this year. So if that had stayed level, our ask to the general support grant, that would have been like 4% less. Am I looking at that correctly? Okay.
I have I think the second page of your handout at the bottom of that, showing you what your current fund balances
Okay.
are. So you can, if you wanted to, because the way that we set up that general reserve was for it to be open-ended, for the board to decide whether it could be used for capital expenditures or tax stabilization. So that's certainly within your purview to discuss as bringing that in to help offset. Something we can talk about in January.
Point, though, with, it's kind of like the buy down on the state side, right? It would be a one and done and
So,
Last year's buy down was 115 maybe a little high, maybe 100.
118, I think, between what they pulled in from other funds and then what the surplus was in the ed fund.
The initial number I heard today, and again, it's not an official statement, was 75. So.
Beth has a question.
Suck the wind right out of the room.
I'm on the website for Act 73 and AOE, and I'm wondering, I don't think this will take effect until 2027, but is anyone monitoring the statewide graduation requirements and whether conversations are happening about that may impact the courses that we need to offer, or have you heard anything about that, Superintendent
There
Payne?
are initial conversations about that, and I know that when the governor brought his cabinet to Bennington for the day, there was a discussion. We didn't participate in that, but I also know that they're getting quite a bit of feedback around that. Basic things, I'll use foreign language as an example. You know, if we require 2 years of every student graduating, that would obviously have an impact on staffing. You'd have to staff up for that. And then I also heard from superintendents who represent very rural areas saying that they already have a challenge hiring for Spanish. And then being able to offer a variety of languages, which was also a topic, would be a challenge. So I would rate graduation requirement as early conversations.
Great, thanks, but something that may certainly impact this discussion next
Absolutely.
year.
Absolutely.
And then the other question I had about, there, as you mentioned before, there are certain things over which we have control and certain things we don't. And I'm wondering if you could describe the role of academic support and the HHB coordinator. Because the HHB coordinator is to replace a social studies teacher position, right? So it sounds like that's no longer necessary, perhaps due to enrollment or class sizes. And then the academic support, my understanding is that's replacing a grant funded position for a grant that's ended.
I think probably the building administrators would be best suited to answer.
Yeah, so. So it's admin support position, we're seeing the need for an HHP coordinator at the high school to model the position that's at the middle school. Increase in need to address the documentation around HHB language. And we're seeing pop up in the school. So having a full-time HHB coordinator would benefit us at the high school. The enrollment numbers did not necessitate that position in the social studies department. So shifting that, as Renee said, to be a level funded move to an area of more need for us.
Yeah, so it looked like that's at the high school and the academic support is at the middle school. But can you just talk a little bit, excuse me, Principal Carmichael, about what the role of the HHB, which for folks not looking at this is hazing, harassment, and bullying coordinator is? Like, what does that look like?
I could say a little bit, and I mean, obviously, it's Adam's school, Adam's position, but I know that he's kind of, looking at the model of the middle school, and I can speak to it. We've had it for 3 years, I believe it is now. In the 5 years I've been the principal there, I think it's probably the most important position, one of the most important moves that I've made. And I know that sounds kind of dramatic, but I'm gonna say that. The flow of different incidents that come up, and they're not all substantiated cases, but it is at least a full-time job. So students access the HHB coordinator, you're correct, hazing, harassment, bullying, typically they're bullying, harassment, cases at the middle school level anyways. And they can make a report to her and, or to the person in the position. And it's thoroughly investigated, every single thing that comes in. So it is literally, you know, throughout the day, every day, all day. You know, the different reports that come in, they're looked at, they're investigated, they're documented. There's a lot of data that I have that I could actually share with the board, again, comparing middle school versus high school, but I think it would be a very similar approach. And what I was finding is that there are legal steps that you have to take in an investigation. And we were having a lot of difficulty following all the steps because of the flow. And the administrators in the building that were tasked with doing this were really having difficulties sending the letters, doing the follow-up. And maybe most importantly, it's not always the substantiated case. A lot of times you're mitigating additional harm because you're catching things before they become an actual bullying or harassment case. You're getting on it when it's you know, a first instance. It's not repeated over time. It's not bullying, but you're getting ahead of it. And the person in my you know, school does documents and does follow-up and check-ins with the students, both the victim you know, and the person committing the, you know, the act. And it's just been so valuable. And the feedback that I've gotten from parents, from students, and to know that, like, I mean, I take them, you know, I take kids coming up to me all the time. Can I talk to you, Mr. McGuire? And you know, if you're gonna keep you know, the momentum doing with the other components of an administrative job, those things take a long time to do thoroughly. You know, you have a kid come in and make a report, and then that turns into 10 other kids that you have to talk to substantiate a report. And it definitely is about finding the right person for the position that has the, you know, the skills to do the investigative work, to do the documentation, to be very organized. But man, it's been invaluable at Mount Anthony Middle School, and I strongly recommend it. You know, and yeah, so I just wanted to say that piece. And if the board desired, I could show my HHP coordinator compiles data monthly and sends it to the admin team. How many reports came in? How many were substantiated bullying? How many were substantiated harassment? You know, the follow-up stuff. And I could share that just to get a sense of numbers of the flow of things. And what I will say is that we're seeing and I specifically remember this the last month because I gave her the feedback that I was impressed. The number of substantiated reports, not the number of things coming in, but the number of substantiated reports are trending down. And that's, again, because we're getting ahead of it and we're staying on top of it and taking all the steps and doing them really thoroughly.
I would
That's
also
great to-
argue that this is another expectation placed on schools with no legislative funding to follow the expectation.
But I'd like to add, that was one of the things that this board really insists on getting and setting up in the middle school because of all of the parental problems were being raised that were coming in, and we needed to get a hold on those things. And this is working. So all of these things that I just talked about is all the things we wanted to hear and know about to control the situation. So another step to the high school, I'm for it. But it had a real significant purpose to solve a lot of issues that we have in our community.
They also interface a lot with, you know, district office, you know, who, you know, and Jess in her role, looking at Title IX investigations. And we have a number of cases this year, just gonna attest to it, that, you know, we're collaborating with Jess on. And I feel like we finally have a well-oiled machine to give, you know, appropriate attention to this really important work.
Was that the same year that we added two additional, like,
Safety.
safety? Yeah, I mean, as a parent, I had a child in pre that decision, and now I have one in post, and there is a remarkable difference in the school. I personally think, but I think it was an important decision to do.
That's great to hear. And Leon, it's helpful to have your institutional memory. And, you know, remembering where this came from. So I'll just, speaking for myself, that would be really valuable data to have. And would love to learn more about that, especially as it sounds like, you know, very supportive of extending that position to the high school as well.
Yeah, and Beth, just so you know, we actually added one of these positions at the elementary level for this current year as well.
I know I've talked too much now, but would you like me to talk about the academic support position?
And just like an overview of what that is. Is that a para? Is that a?
Yeah, no, it's a teaching position. So it's timely in this conversation because with the discussions we're having around Act 77 and, you know, discussions around class sizes and things of that nature, the piece that we haven't talked about tonight is the increased need that of the students that we're serving and what we're asked as a school to help with when it comes to mental health, SEL support, things of that nature. And so one of my worries is as class sizes go up, we have less paraeducators in classrooms, we have less support in classrooms. How are we going to serve the needs of the increased number of students in classrooms? And one thing that we put in place with this grant position is when students are struggling academically, and there's certainly a social, as all of our teachers are asked to do, there's certainly a social emotional learning component to what they do. And it's an attempt to, when students are struggling, to give them a couple things, and they're not rocket science, but Mr. Payne's heard me go down this path, but I ask myself when it comes to like kids having success in our summer offerings, why are they having the success versus when I have 520 students in the building, when there's only 100 students, and I've narrowed it down to a couple insights that I think relate to this position. So, smaller class sizes, interest-based activities, and one trusted adult. When students are struggling, I chuckle, but I shouldn't chuckle, but I do chuckle and say, why are we asking the student to transition through 8 different adults during their day? And there's bound to have something that happens there. Shrink it down a little bit, give them one trusted adult that they can connect with, that they can feel really comfortable with, that they can get that additional attention to really dive into academic support, social emotional learning. And that's what this position not only attempts to do, this position has done over the course of the last couple of years. So it's an attempt to keep that momentum going, while at the same time I'm anticipating that, we may have an ask of increased class sizes, and we have students that's going to be a challenge for. But it is a teaching position.
It's interesting that you say that, because to me, it feels like it's directly, Act 73 is directly in opposition of flexible pathways, right? Like, we can have flexible pathways, but they all have to be in this room, one room together. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
So for the next draft, is there anything
Yeah.
you'd like to?
Is there any direction the board would like to with Renee with respect to the next draft? I mean,
So I have just another question. The enrollment for secondary and elementary is about the same, correct? Give or take 50 or so kids, but the differences seem to be a little bit higher. So what am I missing for the two budgets? In terms of what do we need more in one set as compared to the other?
Like, are you asking why the UED budget is less than Mount Anthony?
Just wondering if we,
Well, you have a higher enrollment with Mount Anthony because you have all the kids from North Bennington also coming in as well. And you've got your 6th grade from Bennington also coming in. Yeah.
is there any direction that, is there anything that you would look closer at?
Sticker shot, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, are there vacancies currently that exist in,
Yeah, and that funding is actually being used to pay for extra courses that are being offered because there are vacancies. So, in some cases, actually, yeah.
As far as positions being open in the spring, I mean, at this point, you're hearing mostly from retirement because contractual language says they have to notify by January 6th. Those are starting to trickle in. There's resignations within the MAU. And folks will start changing positions come spring. I'm a little less optimistic about a lot of folks transferring because I think the economic condition across the region is going to get tough. And I would imagine folks are going to be a little hesitant to jump to a new building and find themselves last hired, first fired situation. So we'll see. Renee, could we come back possibly and offer a scenario to where the school budget, we cut it in half? We go to 3%. That would put us in line with the elementary school. Elementary, I'm sorry, is 2.5 or 3.
They're at 3.
So if we came back and showed folks with it, again, I don't want to raise people's hopes too much. Renee's been pretty clear. In order to get the penny, you know what you have to cut in order to get to that. But could we come back and perhaps show you something that's equal to an elementary school increase?
well, yeah, I mean, I think that it would be an interesting exercise from our perspective to see just how much it would slash. But I mean, I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there have been years where the elementary district is higher than Mount Anthony in terms of percentages of increase or, so I don't want to get into a condition in which we're, I feel strongly that our role, and this I was gonna say in the chair's report, but I feel strongly our role is to, as fiduciaries, is to like help adequately fund the schools, right? Like for, and we want to do it responsibly, so that it has as little impact as we can on the taxpayers, but it is not I do not believe it is our job to keep the taxes as low as possible. I'm not advocating to go out and be like, all right, let's throw some more stuff in here. But I want people, we are not the sole responsible, just because our increase is that percentage this year. There have been plenty of other years where other districts that all contribute to this tax, plays a role. I mean, SVSU is one of them, right? We have special educators that are housed under that space, right? Like that and central office costs get distributed down to to impact us. So I think it'd be an interesting exercise to see what it would look like, what we would really have to do so the board could make those choices or think it through.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like the idea of that and that, we're putting it back with you and your team of experts to come to us and say, this is what we could do. This is what it looks like. Do you, the board, feel like this is in line with not only your own beliefs, but what you would be hearing from people who are in your towns?
And to piggyback on that, I'm still curious as to how 73 plays into this and.
We all are.
And whether that is part of that balance.
Is it the canvas that's half painted, or are they gonna repaint a new one completely in the January legislative session? No, nobody knows.
I mean, class sizes will be a 3-year average, right? So they're gonna roll out with the guidance as soon as the law goes into effect. So we will have time to, implement and not be
Thank you. That's that.
out of compliance.
I would suggest for the purposes of this committee, this board, your January meeting is not until the 21st of January. So we sent chairs a draft calendar with the suggestion only for the MAU at this point, because you're so far back in the calendar. And I think it's the 21st. If I'm incorrect, I apologize. But the 22nd is when the window opens. January 22nd is when the window opens and you can start to warn and post your budgets for town vote. So that puts you very close to kind of the opening of the window. And the window stays open till February 1st, but that's a Sunday. So we've got to cheat it and come back a few days. And so the suggestion is my suggestion to the chair was to move your meeting 2 weeks forward. And that would put you on the seventh, be the first week back from the winter break. I've talked to Renee, she didn't yell at me too much. We could make some adjustments, come back. And that way you could get that first look. If you had any more directions, we haven't left you to the last days of the month to consider. You don't have to make that decision
No, I
right
mean,
now, but.
I think historically, that's what we've done. We've had multiple meetings before
Yeah.
that time period, like ideally, two would be like
Sure.
not having multiple, but if we have to, we will, like, so that we can hit the morning.
Yes. As budget meetings, just budget.
Yes.
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 Yep.
Yeah, no,
Good
no, we
clarification.
don't, like for the purpose, and if I remember last year, I think it was largely done by Zoom, I think, but could be, but, yes, I think that makes sense. Do people want to look at their calendars for the seventh right now? Well, so that we can make a decision, or we can send a message around. Are those the only days that work for?
Calendar
We
goes up
wanted to,
pretty
we wanted to honor, I think the idea was to honor the day of the week that this board normally meets.
But did you say this February 7th?
January.
January seventh, sorry, January seventh. So moving it forward 2 weeks, but landing on the same night of the week. I know some folks may plan their life by what day of the week is.
I can make it work. I would ideally not want it to be that day, but I can just the seventh, but I will show up if that is the only day that we can do it. Or we could push it back a little. I don't, from a timing perspective, I don't know. Like, I think I was planning on volunteering for a race that is located in Bennington and it was over
For me,
the seventh.
coming back so soon, everybody's trying to roll everything right in the new year just for the start. So,
You do not have to decide tonight.
Okay,
We
we
can
will-
revisit
we
it,
can-
absolutely.
we
You
can
can
set
do
up a
a
poll.
survey of the
Okay.
board and folks can tell us what works. Yeah, the chairs do have a mocked up January that shows all board meetings, negotiations for the SU are on there. There is a holiday on the 19th. So, we'll take some creative scheduling, but we can do it.
Yeah, I will. Sorry.
so one question.
I'll put you down here.
Just a question for Renee. How much of this budget, I mean, do we actually have some control over? The amount of I mean, we got a lot of mandated stuff and we got the insurance pool out and we get all this kind of stuff. It would be very helpful for the public to know that, hey, we got all this money we're talking about, but all of it is not what we can control.
I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
It was something I said in jest to somebody the other day, which was, I think it was after what is the name of the lead person in the Senate? He has a term. But either way, he said, we're just gonna come back to the boards and tell them that they have to make cuts.
Oh,
And my response was, well, fine, we'll make the cuts of the things we don't have control over and we'll send it back to them. And see what they I mean, and I say all of that in jest, but it's a huge number. And our hands are really tied on so much of this.
Well, Renee, you said, and I don't know, we've been to a couple of meetings this week together. Wages and benefits is 70 to 75% of your budget.
Mhm.
And those are contractual, so those have been agreed upon, you move forward. And the rest of it is turning the lights on, heating the buildings, buying equipment, so.
Your paper and your pens and pencils will not move your needle very much on the budget.
okay, so it sounds like, for next time, you're gonna give us a, like what it would look like if we had to cut it down to 3%, and you can, if possible, would you highlight what we have control over and what we don't, as part of the process, so that we can have a discussion, or at least have more informed conversations with our taxpayers?
Are you okay with that, Renee?
somewhat, I mean, it's a little challenging, and, I mean, because it's really gonna be head count, right? So it will be, you know, if we're looking at,
I mean, could you, is it, I was just thinking roughly, like if you just like throw, you know, like if your health insurance is roughly X and
Yeah.
like you roughly have 5 positions, and I mean, that was, it was why we don't need to hold it to, like, you know, and if it's just,
you know, me, like.
I know you're gonna tie it all. I mean, if it's just, if it's something that like, you know, is, that we can just talk about too, that's fine. I just didn't know if there were other things. Like, clearly there are, like, if you're talking about the AED, you know, we're gonna have to
Yep.
spend 75,000, is that in the budget or when that mandate goes into play, like, there's other.
Or the other piece of this, is there, revenue that we haven't considered, that could be an increase that maybe we'll learn more about?
Pretty much the only thing would be using that reserve fund. Unless you're gonna drum up some kids coming in from out of
Oh.
district.
I was thinking, I was thinking state support grants. I was thinking.
Okay, well, it sounds like, that we have a path forward, at least until the next meeting. Thank you for all your efforts. I know that it is a lot.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Renee.
We will move on to- we'll move on to operations. We have, Mount Anthony Middle School trail update.
So that's my responsibility. Just this is comes from a note in case folks driving by the middle school campus notice. There is a trail system at the middle school. It's used by a variety of groups within our community. Use on the land, if folks aren't familiar, the campus is a little over 100 acres, is governed in large part by Act 250, which is a state law regarding land use regulations. There is currently trail maintenance. There was maintenance done on the trails this fall. It's an existing nature trail loop. It's on the north side of campus. A variety of folks, grounds crew, athletic staff, and community volunteers helped tidy up the trail. I say that because there is a plan. Should back up. We are currently reviewing boundary markers, right of ways, and any kind of signage or maintenance requirements under Act 250, because there will be construction work going on at the middle school during this current year. In reviewing the Act 250 permit, we were told that we need to install a stormwater retention pond that would be located at the front of campus, near the hoop house, the greenhouse that you see from the road. So we just are making folks aware of that in case they see an excavator out there and they're digging. This is all part of meeting the requirements of an existing permit.
Any questions?
Can I just add to the, or ask, because I know it came up on a different board that I'm on. But that is the use of the trail. Part of that property is it owned by Trust for Wildlife?
Not the part that he's speaking about,
No, but
but the, is
so
it the adjacent?
while we're on trails,
Yeah, that is what we're trying to clarify because there is existing regulations for how the land is used. So in conversations with Tony and Holly and Mike Malloy from athletics, the conversation started with a cross-country loop at the middle school, which is desired. We'd like to have that for students to be able to access. Currently, we're working just on Mount Anthony marked property, but we want to revisit and make sure, because there's right of ways and boundaries that need to be revisited and say, yep, we know exactly where our property ends. Act 250 has also designated things like wetlands and things like that on the property, so we need to be very aware of where we are trekking out into the property.
So the Trust for Wildlife Board met recently and should the cross-country course need to go over the Trust for Wildlife piece, they are open to it as long as Trust for Wildlife can be listed as additional insured.
Understood. I
So,
will have Holly write that down, and like I said, we have a small working group. Mike, as athletic director, is interested in that too, because it needs to be insured. Anything that we're gonna use for an athletic event would have to be insured properly.
the space, the trails would be, I personally walked them. They're very beautiful and it's on campus and it's, having cross-country have to practice by running around downtown with 20 or more middle school kids, with one or two coaches is I can only imagine to be a challenge. And so I do, I think that it would be nice, like some of the courses that the kids go to around the state, they're beautiful and they're like, it's a point of pride, it would be nice. We're obviously, I think we're losing SVs. I mean,
SVC
from,
would be a-
at some point, from a trail perspective for the running. So it might be a nice thing to look at, as a board to explore that partnership. And so but I do agree with you that from a board perspective, we need to make sure that we're in compliance and that any trail maintenance doesn't impact wetlands or, whatever our Act 250 permits.
So if there's a point person that you can share contact information with Holly, that would be awesome. That'd be a big.
I can serve that role.
Does anyone have any questions about?
How many boards do you use?
Okay.
Just
we
a
will-
couple.
With no questions, we'll move on. We had an action, but I don't, I think that at this point, it's an update is.
Yep, just an update. Yep, if we come back and say, oh, we need board approval to submit a permit or things like that, we can do that.
I think
None needed at this point.
the other piece that would trigger board approval would be if, through conversations, it was decided it made sense to, be able to utilize the land next to like I'm sorry, what was it? The land trust,
Trust for a while.
the trust for wildlife. If that were to occur and there was some sort of agreement, that would have to.
Absolutely.
For it. Okay, great. We'll move on to a dump truck bid. It is posted, I believe, in the packet.
It is.
Here. Holly, do you want to walk us through?
Sure, I wanted to let you know that I know better now, so I did better, I hope. And, in the packet is the, invitation bid with all the requirements, the summary sheet, the winning bid, and all the details there. So that should all be in the packet if you have any questions.
Don't have any questions. I read it, but I just wanted to say that for the purpose of the TV, a synopsis of it would be great. I agree with it 100%, but they don't have this copy. So,
They
So just speak it.
It's accessible online, but. we
I
can
mean,
get
it's
a
in the
quick
packet, but I'm
summary.
saying on video.
That's why
if
we
you're-
need it.
Since we're live, for those that are out there may not know what that is, and so a synopsis of the bid was very simple. You can break it, probably say it 3 or 4 words, what you did and how it came out, and we'll support that because, I will, because I think it's well put together.
Thank you very much. The current condition of the dump truck in question at the MAU high school, the frame is well past its life. The worst thing you can ever do is have salt and water. It's metal, obviously. So it's past the point of being able to use safely. And that's why we put this in the budget last year. It got voted on and approved, so we went through the process of getting all the bids to replace it. And we use it for snow removal and earthwork during the summer.
What's happening with the old truck?
I'll find out.
Oh, I didn't know if it was part of, okay.
A lot of times like they can, like, it would be a Renee question that we can answer for the next meeting. probably.
Sometimes it goes into we're going to offset.
Like trading. in,
Yeah,
for instance.
trading.
Mhm. From what I read, these numbers don't represent if we're having a trade. No.
And the existing truck doesn't have a trade-in value. It's other than scrap.
Negligible.
Next, yeah.
At least one question, and maybe the short bounce to Renee, will we be able to take advantage of the accelerated depreciation that's out there? Or are we
I mean,
capable of
we're
that
not,
as a-
we don't pay, I mean, we generally,
Well, it's not, I know we're not like paying sales tax, but there is a depreciation that like if a company were to buy it, like if I bought it, I'd be able to depreciate it 100%.
yes, and that, I mean, is pretty impactful for people who pay taxes, but we collect, you know, we run off of collecting the taxes, so that we don't pay federal from that perspective, right? And
Answer.
so.
You do well. Thank you.
That's kind of answer.
So the dump truck bid went out and, the specifications went to everybody is what I mean, I looked at them. But I think the recommendation, we getting a better deal out of the recommendation when it went compared to all the other bidders out here. So, I'm in favor and like to move that we agree to purchase the truck, the 555 versus a 250 and a 350 for approximately the same amount of money out there. And so I'd like to move that so that it will,
Are you moving to support, so
we accept the bid as recommended by.
okay, which, and that was to purchase the vehicle to Formula Ford and authorize expenditures from a general fund of up to $93,418.
That's correct.
To cover the purchase outlined.
Yep.
So we have a
Like to
motion.
Second that.
Well, you're gonna, okay, so we have a motion from Leon and a second from Glenn.
Yep.
Any discussion?
I still had a few questions, sorry.
No.
Just feel like
That's
I'm,
what I'm here for.
that, yeah. So I was just wondering, it states somewhere that you have a dump trailer already? That you're using this piece of equipment as a dump truck, but you also have a dump trailer as well? Is that true?
I will look into that and get back to you.
Okay. So and I know that you have a tractor in existence that you share with, or I believe you do, that you share with the elementary school district. And so I'm just trying to envision how big our fleet is, because I know that we have a beautiful new van that we're moving students around in. And I'm just curious how big our fleet is.
Sure. I'm happy to get together that information. We'll get it back to you.
And that's
Yeah.
part of the confusion I have as to what is the need, what is our overall need? And if I had a choice between a class or a dump truck, and it feels sometimes like we have to make those choices, where is it that we want to fund?
So, and I think we could at a different meeting, put that on the agenda to discuss this fleet size for the purpose of this. I mean, is this used, I mean, this is used to sand and salt and help it be safe for people to enter the building, correct? And to park in it. And we do not currently have another vehicle owned by MAU that can.
That is correct.
Do that. Okay. So we have a motion on the table from Leon, seconded by Glenn. Are there other discussion?
This was perfectly presented. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
I-
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so Sandy's abstained, and we will get that on the agenda for a different time, so that you can.
Thank you.
Okay. We are moving. Sorry, I lost my agenda. Okay, we do not, all right, student reports, very patient student representatives.
Yeah, so our clubs have been pretty busy recently, especially our ones involving the community service National Honor Society. We recently had a blanket drive and a pan drive, which were both big successes. All the goods that we gathered from those drives, we went to the Harvest House and the Banking Coalition. We're also running this week Candygrams, which basically is just kind of like you can sign up and like pay to have a candy cane with a little note delivered to whoever you want. It can be anonymous or whatever. It's really fun. And we also have Sunday supper planned this weekend at the Second Congregational Church, which is we're prepping food and dinner for 250 people. Interact and ACT are partnering to create a youth council. The main purposes of this is to discuss issues that are important to young people and develop like community projects and to share their ideas like directly with the select board. And also not like this past weekend, but the weekend before, we held the Spirit of Sharing, which is for kids whose families don't have like the means to have it like for as much gift giving or whatever. MAU Nation also provided 11 local kids with presents through Holiday Helping Hands last week. Tonight, actually in about 7 minutes, is the winter concert, the band and chorus concert. There's the jazz band and wind ensemble are performing. I was gonna say like if this ended earlier, go check it out, but maybe it won't. Also this past Saturday, we had a Cookies and Carols holiday party at the high school, where students could eat, and Bernie Sanders gave a talk, which was really cool, and students got to meet him. I couldn't go, but my brother went, and I heard it was really cool. And this Friday, Chorus is going to be going on a caroling bus tour.
Winter sports have started. Right now there's basketball, Nordic dance, indoor track, wrestling, and swim. Basketball, girls have a game tomorrow against Windsor, and boys have a game on Friday versus Springfield. They're both at home. Nordic had a race today. Indoor track had a meet last Saturday, and swim also has a meet this Friday. And then this week there's Spirit Week going on, and break starts this weekend for us. The quarter and first semester end on January 16th, and seniors are starting to hear back from schools, and if you're interested in keeping up with it, there is an Instagram page that we invite you to follow.
And that page is.
It's called it's MAU26_decisions. But if you just look up MAU26, it'll probably come up.
Great, thank you. On to the high school.
And that is the easiest job because my students cover just about everything. We're the hardest having to follow them up. So I will try not to be repetitive and just give a brief principal report, some highlights from the last month. I will just share a few more details around the Holiday Helping Hands program because that was a huge success again, as the girls mentioned. It was been going strong for over 10 years now. High school students and staff have been very generous in giving back to the community, providing presents for students and families, wish lists, and this year provided presents for over 75 children in the community. So it's a very great program that we're happy to see continue to go strong and grow each year. So we want to thank everyone that helped make that a success. As the girls mentioned, we were happy to host Senator Sanders at the high school last weekend. And again, as they mentioned, looks like we're all going to unfortunately miss it, but the winter concert is tonight and taking place in about 4 minutes now. All the winter sports have started. The winter break coming up at the end of this week. Students and staff returning January 2nd, students returning January 6th. During the break, we know our gym just received a new set of bleachers and it'll get a fresh coat of wax. So coming back from the break, we'll have a very nice looking gymnasium with the bleachers and a freshly waxed floor. So that'll be good for the sports teams going forward from there. We're wrapping up our Spirit Week this week. And as we return from break, we'll look forward academically to some MAT testing. Students always look forward to that. And final exams and end of the first semester, the week of January 12th through the 16th.
Any questions?
I'd like to know when we get a chance. I keep seeing Bernie at the high school, but I don't know, get a chance to know Bernie's going to the high school. And I try to catch him, but I can't. And so that's Bernie Sanders and meeting. That took place, I think.
I'll tell you that they did, Bernie's team did place one ad in the banner.
Okay, I read it every day. I miss it.
Yeah,
And you know, it's political party. We're trying to catch him. A lot of people hit me and say, you know, what Bernie
I
Sanders.
signed up for
I'm
Bernie's
saying,
newsletter, and I got an email
you did.
notifying me that this was happening, that he was doing it in several places in the state, and that there was an option to RSVP to join, so.
I didn't get it.
What did he do? I mean, the last time he was here that I went to, he did like a student forum where he.
It was Christmas bells and cookies.
Oh.
Yeah,
With me
yeah,
and selfies.
Yeah.
yes.
Selfies with the students.
I think he was here probably 8 years ago or.
He did,
7
he
years
did
ago.
do,
Yeah.
I didn't go, I just read the story in the banner. He did do a question and answer.
Basketball giveaway or something.
Oh, right, the basketball thing. Yes.
I missed it.
That was last winter.
thought for Principal Carmichael or the students that left. Leon mentions he gets his news from the banner. I do too. And yet we haven't had hardly any news on winter sports. Girls basketball has played 2 games. I read one line of it on a story about Arlington. The boys have played a game, and that was on Friday. Today I read a story about it, and it had a picture from last year. Wrestling, I haven't seen anything. Cross-country skiing, nothing. I'm wondering if we could inspire some of our students to become stringer reporters for the banner. I think they would do a great job. It would look good on their resume. The banner could probably pay them something. And that way I could get my news, and I'm sure there are other people that get their news from the banner.
Heard that from.
So the good news is that the banner has made an offer to, for someone to replace Mike. And the even better news is that he was an intern with Mike last year, so he already knows some of the coaches. So that's a good thing. To your second point, we did try to organize, to have the sports journalist classes from both BBA and MAU to coordinate with our editor. And I gotta tell you, I was on the emails, and it wasn't for lack of trying to coordinate schedules. It just didn't work for, I think it didn't work for, the journalism classes to have time to have our editor come talk, or vice versa. I'm not sure. I kind of dropped out at that. So. But the good news is hopefully we'll have somebody in the, probably he'll be onboarded before break is over, so. Good. But we're, I got it, the reason you got the basketball story today is because Todd Ordway, reached out to me last night and said, if I write it, will you put it in? And I said, of course. So if anybody wants to submit to us, we'll certainly read it and edit it. We don't expect everybody to be sports editor, sports journalists. And I will submit it to the news team to get in the paper. And pictures, we don't know the kids. We just don't know. I think she just grabbed a stock picture. So we would have offered pictures too.
Well, that's great information. I'm
Mhm.
sure that there's some kids or parents around that will be happy to contribute some information.
One pager, Mr. Finley's a one pager.
Let's move on to the middle school report, please.
Yep, so I have 3 items tonight. Want to highlight my student council. You guys heard me talk about it before. I love meeting with my student council. It's the one meeting that, when Mrs. Hollister tells me, all right, you got student council coming this morning, 8 to 8:30, I clear the deck. And it's not always easy, but I keep that meeting with them. So they're working on, this was 8th grade student council. I have been meeting with, I meet with all grade levels, but 8th grade is usually the most active. they're working on 3 projects right now. One of them is pretty straightforward. It's a Spirit Week this week. Today was Whiteout Day. I was very impressed. I actually got my stuff together and wore all white.
Well, that's not white.
Well, you sound like someone else I know.
You could look like the good humor man. That would have been.
I tried. I put some effort in today. I was disappointed with myself because it was flannel day on Monday and I totally, on that one, I love flannels. So I was disappointed in myself. So they're working on they have a Spirit Week this week. A really cool idea to create a student section for MAU middle school athletic games. So, getting students to kind of, sit together in a section, have, you guys know I do it at the high school, but bring that practice to the middle school. So that's going to be starting after the break, including, an after school program that's creating like signage and stuff like that, all vetted. And also having a conversation around possibly having some sort of study hall option again in our schedule, which is a bigger discussion for a different night, not tonight. But it was neat to have these conversations with 8th grade students. Item number 2, a testing update, favorite topic, right? We've been chosen and selected again to take place in the NAEP assessment. That is an acronym for National Assessment of Educational Progress, also referred to sometimes as the Nation's Report Card, something that the U.S. Department of Education does. Again, we've been selected. So on February 18th, we'll be doing that assessment. Huge shout out to my testing coordinator, Rachel Kitt, who I would be lost without. And Stacy Alexander, Associate Director of Student Services, working closely with them to make sure that this is all running smoothly. It's supposed to assess what K through 12 students know in core subjects, math, reading, science. There is an opt-out process. There's 50 students selected to take the assessment. It's not all 8th graders, and there is an opt-out process. So we're working through all that, the letters, the whole thing. And on February 18th, they'll be coming to the building. They come to the building and they walk you through the assessment. Also have math on the testing item. We also have math testing, as Adam said, taking place January 13th for ELA test and January 14th for the math test. And then the third item is just a highlight. Again, concerts have been discussed tonight. Had a course concert on December 15th, which was Monday. Great turnout. Always sounding good. Mr. Edwards does a great job with the chorus. And there's a band concert coming up on January 15th. Mrs. Mills does a great job with the band. Always get, huge props and shout outs whenever they perform. That's what I have tonight. Did I do okay?
Yep, you did. I got babysitter, but I gotta get somebody else. It's running long.
Sorry. Any questions? Now we'll move on to the SU report. There is.
Do you have anything, Katie, before?
Let's see, SU report, for the members of the board, this isn't necessarily SU specific, but we are in ongoing, negotiations with teachers and support staff. Progress is being made there, still working through some things, so, I think as Nay alluded to, there's, obviously that is an impact to the budgets we looked at this evening, and, we're working through that. Our next meeting, for those who would like to review those meetings, they have been recorded, and I believe they are on CAT TV. So you could watch the recordings if you had any interest in learning kind of where we are up to this moment. And then the next meeting is on January 20th. And then we let's see, at the SU level, the important task of providing feedback to the superintendent through an annual review. We've started that process, and as of last evening, there will be an opportunity for feedback in that process, both through your board chair or to me directly. So if anybody would like to provide any feedback there for us to use for us to consider.
we're in the throes of budget season, as we all saw this evening at the SU level as well.
Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Many of you may have seen, there is a community input survey that has gone out for Act 73. We decided last night as a board, obviously, when you look at the SU board, there are several districts within it that each have their own interests and concerns and priorities with regard to Act 73. And so we wanted to, and that's on the makeup of the board itself. So we wanted to gather impact or gather feedback there, as well as allowing the people within member districts to provide feedback for us to consider as we form a subcommittee. We're talking about forming a subcommittee that would review the feedback that we receive and potentially make a recommendation or recommendations for how we would like to see things move forward. Not that they would necessarily be accepted, but sometimes telling people what you would like can go a long way in having that happen. So that process has just gotten started. You should have, I think many of you would have seen the email
Today.
in your inbox today, as well as being put
I didn't
out.
get it in my box, but I got it. I saw it on Facebook.
Saw it on
Yeah.
Facebook, so it's also being pushed out via social channels as well. And probably on the SU website, or will be.
Yeah, we're just starting that.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? For our chair's report, I was just gonna give an update on where we were with negotiations, but Scott covered that for the most part. I believe at the meeting on Monday, we came to 10 tentative agreements as part of the with salaries still, not one that is not in that list of agreements. But we will see where we go on the 20th. And that is it for me. There's a budget status. The treasurer report was not there when I pulled the information down today. There is the internal controls. I do know that I think this is a requirement that it's shown to the boards annually. It's something that the finance department has to fill out every year. We have an executive session for one VSA 313A3 appointment, employment, or evaluation of a public officer or employee. Can I have a motion to go into executive session and bring Superintendent Payne and Principal Carmichael and Nick is HR is not able to.
So moved.
So I have a motion by Susan and second by Leon, all in favor? We will not be returning with an act. There's no action, I believe, that will come out of this, so just in case.
Yeah, because it has action on
It
the.
does say action, so I mean, I just wanted to, we can. I didn't even go on.